Hey there, listeners. Welcome to Shit That Goes On in Our Heads, the podcast where we normalize conversations around mental health.
That's right. I'm Dirty Skittles, and alongside my amazing co-host, Rex, we are here to share stories and tips from our incredible guests.
Each episode, we deep dive into struggles and triumphs of mental health, offering practical advice and heartfelt support.
Because no one should feel alone in their journey. Join us as we break the stigma and build a community of understanding and compassion.
Tune in and let's start talking about the shit that goes on in our heads. Three, two, one. Welcome back to another episode of Shit That Goes On in Our Heads. I'm G-Rex with my amazing co-host, Dirty Skittles. And today we have Liv. Welcome, Liv. I know it's super early where you're at.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I was looking forward to joining.
Yay! I'm so happy that you're here, first of all, because it is so early, but I'm also really excited to hear your story. So with that being said, Liv, what do you want to share with our listeners?
Well, so I'm a romance author. I've written 3 books, Law and Disorder, Etched, and Stepping Stone. They're all, so the first one, Law and Disorder, it's about enemies to lovers type romance. All 3 books have a bit of spice. Etched in Stone and Stepping Stone, they're both really cool in the way that it's office romance. And I thought, but it's not only office romance, it has the romantic suspense, so financial crime elements as well. And all my books, I like to do relatable characters with real life challenges just so that people can relate to it. Like, for example, Stepping Stone, the main male character has PTSD, and so he shows signs of it. And the main female character, she likes to explore her sexuality. And I think that's often taboo in society, especially for women. And so with the main male character, since I have anxiety, I've incorporated some of those maybe traits or symptoms into his character, just hopefully so people will be more relate to it, I guess.
Oh my God. G-Rex, did you do this on purpose?
Yeah. So, Liv, you were talking Dirty Skittles' love language for sure. She is so into spicy novels. I think she has more of those than she has anything else in her house.
Yeah, I don't know how I fell into it. Oh, God. I'm almost afraid to say it. I am. You know what? I will say it for me. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's where it got started. There is a series. God, the author's name is escaping me now. But it was, I think the first book was called Flock. Does that sound familiar? I'm going to have to Google it. Anyhow, it is a trilogy. It's a 3-part series. And it is about a woman sort of finding herself, I guess, after... Have you heard of this book yet?
No, I thought that you were afraid to say it. I thought you were going to say 50 Shades of Grey, and I was going to say, there's no shame in saying it.
My spice level, okay, so 50 Shades of Grey falls on a scale of 1 to 10, and I would put 50 Shades at like a 5 for my spice level. My spice level goes to like 10 or 11. Like, it gets weird. But basically, this series, I enjoyed it because it was about a woman kind of actually discovering herself in romance. But what I enjoyed about the series was it was the first time I had read a book where that stigma was removed off of a woman being sexual and not having judgment for it, and whatever that like for her, it is. And I thought, wow, I can't believe like there's an author out there that's writing something like this, because I myself reading it was, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're saying this out loud, right? But why not?
I think so. I know, that's what I think, and that's what I love about romance novels. It's because I think the women, they do have that space to explore what they actually want. And I think that's what everyone deserves, even though society thinks of it as taboo, even though everyone has had sex before. But people, like, when you talk about it, there's like this harsh thing or like a bit of shaming about it. And even as a romance novelist, there's a lot of sniggering around it and that taboo around it, which is weird because I guess that double level of sexism sometimes when people ask me questions about writing romance. because there's a lot of sniggering saying, is this based on real life? Or how did you get your inspiration? Week, nudge, nudge. But then when you think about it, people don't ask a thriller author, have you ever murdered someone in real life? So it's that double standard.
Right. It's crazy. It's crazy. Do you do like conventions and stuff? Do you go out and like meet fans? It's like that.
I do book signings, which is a lot of fun. I do really enjoy it. And so the last one I did was a little while ago, maybe a year ago, and there was a few authors signing at the same time. So readers really had the chance to get to know new authors.
That's really cool. I'm starting to dive into like something around that, not an author at all, but I was doing research on these conventions that happen for specific like romance writers. And I was like, I love that we're doing that. It doesn't have to be like, I don't know, that we don't have to hide it anymore. We don't have to hide that this is what we like, or this is what we're writing about, or there's like-minded individuals just like you. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, me too.
And I love the fact that your books incorporate, real life stuff, like real life mental health stuff, like PTSD and, finding your sexuality and, because it's all about like being able to talk about this and people not feeling shame about it. Like we're all sexual beings, right? Like, and we've all been through our own version of shit per se.
Yeah.
And, being able to kind of read about it, but not in like a self-help book or a technical book, reading about it in like a scenario that, either any of us could fall into and finding a little bit of joy in it, right? Like,
yeah.
How did you, have you always, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, people think that romance novels are very fluffy and there's no substance to it. But I think a lot of that is changing. I've read a lot of romance novels that does go into the deeper type topics. So it is not that stereotype that people think it is.
Yeah. I think that also was something I remember reading about, and because it was the first time I had seen it written, is like diving into deeper topics. I think, you know what it is? I think growing up, somebody in my family, I won't say who they were, but they would have romance novels. And this was like in the 90s. So in the 90s, romance was like a pirate. And like, I don't know, there was no substance other than at least the books that she was picking out. So I think growing up and getting older and kind of falling into where I'm at now with reading these, it's different. It's different. And there's more substance now. It's not just it doesn't have to be all fantasy. I know that fantasy out there is still a thing, but have you always been an author?
To have that there, to have that escape as well. But
Right. Have you always been an author?
So I started off working at a Big Four bank. So very dry role, very soul crushing, boring in home loan sales. So selling things to people that doesn't necessarily can afford it, but like there's that sales target. So I really hated that job. But I did have a good group of friends. But then my mum, she mentioned to me that you've always enjoyed writing since you were a kid, because I was always making up even picture books. And she said, how about you do a course? And she actually recommended a course that she heard was good. So it was a short writing course that is after work hours, and it went for 10 weeks. And so I did just enroll in that, just at her suggestion. And it was really good to connect with like-minded people, because before that, I always thought getting a book publishing deal, that will never happen to me. It's so far out of reach. And when I was speaking to the teacher who's won multiple awards and was with a big 5 publisher, she pretty much said that it is possible, because she did the same course that I was doing years and years ago. Oh, wow. And she said the people that did get that book publishing contract were the ones that kept persisting even through the rejection. So she did make me see that it was possible to pursue a career in writing.
Wow, that's so cool that your mom recommended it and supported you. And hey, check this out, see how this goes. What does your mom think about your career now?
She thinks it's good. I won't let her read my books because I'll be mortified. like just with the sex scenes. Like I know I was just saying it's perfectly natural, but that doesn't mean I want my parents reading
Right.
it.
It's not for parents. Yeah.
Yeah, the first writing course I did, it was actually for children's because I thought it would be pretty cool to write a book potentially that is the first book that a kid might read. So that was my first passion. But then I just ended up writing erotic romance instead.
And you know what? That is perfectly okay because you know what? We need that escapism, right? Like day-to-day life sucks anyway. And you need to have that way to escape and like feel human and know you're in the privacy of your own home. And I remember growing up, there were people in my family that would read the Harlequin romances. And like, I was like, okay, well, I was like 16 and I picked it up and I was like, this isn't a book.
That's so funny.
And like, this is fantastic. But, you know, for people that are like trying to like figure themselves out, you know, reading books like that helps them to figure that part of themselves out because you don't really have to ask other people questions, right? And some people are very nervous and very self-conscious about that. Me, on the other hand, you know what? I'll just, like, if I need to, I'm going to Google it or I'm going to ask somebody that I would know that might know that answer. But, you know, incorporating like the mental health elements into the books, I think that is fantastic.
Do you do research for that part of it, like for the mental health part of it?
Yeah, well, so one person that I met, he actually served in war in Afghanistan, and so that was what the character is based on. And when I was speaking to him, he gave me good insight on what it was like to go over there and serve his country. And he pretty much said that everyone that goes over there, when they come back, they do have some form of PTSD. And he said some of the signs was maybe being very strict on safety to the point of being obsessively so. And also another one was being startled by loud noises because it might remind them of a gun going off or bomb going off. So I incorporated that into my character. But when he was describing some of the symptoms to look out for, like a racing heart, the paranoia, like looking over shoulder or the sweaty palms, even though I know, like, I don't have that experience and I never will have that experience of going to war, and those symptoms like the sweaty palms and the overthinking sometimes, a lot of that does sound like anxiety traits. And I've had anxiety since I was young. So since I was young, I would be awake until all hours of the night over something that would never happen. And this would go on until my alarm went off and the sun came up and I had to go to school. So I would go to school with zero sleep because I was having anxiety thinking about the worst case scenarios over something that would never happen.
I've been there.
Been there, done that.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't think I knew it was anxiety
ridiculous.
until later on in life. I was like, oh,
I didn't know either.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So he was sort of a muse for you in your writing.
Yeah. So he gave a really good insight about what his experiences was like and what that PTSD was like as well. And even though a lot of families of soldiers that's gone to war, they do get information and support about how to support their loved ones going to war. I think a lot of them, they're not fully quite prepared on what to expect when that family member comes back. And that's what I've written into my female character, that even though she got the support, Stepping Stone's a second chance romance because they got separated at the beginning of the novel and they worked their way back together, way back to each other. And part of that reason is she didn't fully understand what she was in for. And so she was going through her own journey of being more supportive and really understanding of what he went through at that time.
Yeah. That's crazy. I actually never thought about it, but yeah, that makes sense because when somebody is my family, I have tons of sisters in my family, but I was just thinking like when they go off and you're left here, you typically have support from friends and family, right? and then they come back and it's supposed to be, oh, everything's great now. They're back. They're alive. Everything's wonderful. But there is an adjustment, isn't there? That like nobody's really talking about. So that's interesting. I never thought about it.
Yeah.
I told you your cup of tea.
Yeah. I don't know how I felt. No, I don't know how I fell into it, but I did. I picked up the series, started reading it, and then that became a thing. And then we did like a couple of my friends, I forced them into doing like a spicy book club where we would read all kinds of books and review them. And it was fun. It was fun for a while. I think I for sure am into the spicy books more so than they are, but it's fine. It's my own thing. It's my me time.
Yeah.
So how many books have you read?
So I've written 3 books. So Law and Disorder, that's enemies to lovers type romance. And each book, there's, I guess, different themes of how the couples have sex. So Law and Disorder, since it's based in a neighborhood, I'm not too sure if you have the TV show Neighbours over in the States, but it's really popular in Australia. It's about people that live on the same street. It's pretty much a soap. And everyone knows each other and they're friends and they're very much involved in each other's lives. And when I first started watching this when I was a kid, I was thinking, this doesn't happen in real life. I don't even know my neighbours' names or like what they look like. And so I thought it'd be really fun to have a setting where it's that similar setting of people being neighbours, but make it that spicier element. And so the couple, they sort of use props around the place. So they have sex on top of the washing machine, and I'm using props around the place, like the kettle going off as the climax was happening. So, and people do think romance is a bit cheesy, but I like embracing that sort of stuff. In my book, Etched in Stone, they have a fetish for having sex in public places. And I think that's something that a lot of people do enjoy, even though they might not say it. And in my book, Stepping Stone, my main female character, she has this desire or this interest in like BDSM. And at the start of the book, she's never voiced this to anyone, even to her husband, who she had been married to for about 15 years, because she was thinking people will just find this weird. But then her character development is having that confidence to be able to express it, even though at the beginning she thought she was a bit embarrassed of it.
Yeah. Yeah. How long does it take you to write each one from start to end?
Very slow writer, so about a year per novel. I'm really jealous of writers that say it takes me only 6 months or less, but I'm pretty slow. So I do the approach of setting a timer for about 15 to 25 minutes and go on writing sprints and just keep writing without stopping, because I think if I go back to edit, I'll just keep editing and I can never finish the book. So I just do the writing sprints.
Do these ideas come to you and then you think about them for a while before you start writing, or you immediately are like, oh, got to do it and jump into it?
I just think I got to do it. I just keep going. Usually I usually don't fully know where the characters are going. So that's what's really good about the writing sprints. But when I do start each book, I usually know how it'll begin and how it'll end. So at least I know what I'm working towards.
No kidding. Interesting. I find this very fascinating. Do you have an idea for your next one?
Yeah, so I'm currently working on a 3rd book in series. So each book for my Invested in You series is based in the same company, so it's same universe, Stone Corp, and the female characters. So there's 3 female characters in the team. Each book is based on a different female character, and they're working in this investment company, and their team is in data analytics and more tech-based. And I thought it would be really cool to write female characters that's often in a male-dominated environment. So the 3rd book it's pretty much comes in a full circle. So the first book, it's a first chance romance, not first chance, it's a first love romance, but that's also a billionaire romance, where you get that a lot in romance books, where female employee and male billionaire. And a lot of people do find that cheesy, but I think there's a reason why it's so popular in the first place. And then the second book, that's the second chance romance of the couple of the PTSD man and the woman interested in BDSM finding the way back to each other. But in the third book, so it's about the manager in the team who's a female, and then she hires a male employee. So then I want it to come in a full circle where it's maybe a female manager.
Yeah, that power dynamic.
I like the power dynamic.
Yeah.
Fuck it, right? So when you changed careers and started writing books, were you, and I guess more specifically going into like the adult type of, spicy content, were you open about it? Like telling everybody, yeah, this is just what I'm doing? Or did you find yourself like kind of like afraid to share?
I was open about it. Everyone besides my parents. It's because my mum, she's even asked me before, where can I read this? And then I give a very vague answer. Like I'm like, it's I don't know where to read it, or it's not out yet because I really don't want them reading it.
I only laugh because like I'm writing my own book on just like my whole, like what happened with my depression and the whole middle chapter where everything was just crazy. And then the end chapter, and somebody reached out to me and said, hey, can you write a PG version of your book? I'm like, no, I don't fucking think I can, because like I want all my emotion to come through. And so I probably have like a few people not read my book because it will be laden with the word fuck.
Yeah.
Like the whole middle chapter is FUCK. And because that's pretty much what it was.
Right. Do you find yourself getting invested in a story, or does it naturally have an end and you move on from there?
I am invested in the story as when I'm writing it. But then I think after I finish it and all the book publicity stuff finishes it, then I've moved on to my next book. But I do still love my characters because I spent so long with them. So like a year with them and then more. So, but I think it's good to move forward as well, to think about the next book. And my writing always gets stronger with each book as well.
Yeah. Could you have imagined that this is what you would be doing when you were working at that shitty job?
Really? I thought I'd be stuck in that job sometime. I thought I'll die there. So.
Oh, this sounds familiar.
It sure as shit does, I tell you. God bless.
So I never thought that. And it's a lot more fun writing spicy scenes. And when I first started writing romance novels, I was thinking, there's only so many ways that someone can have sex. But then the more you get into it, it's like a whole new world out there.
Oh, I could give you some ideas.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay. Like
you have a different dynamic.
I do. I have a completely different dynamic. But I love that you like went and found something that made you happy, right? Didn't sit around in that shitty job, hint, and that you get so much joy out of it. And I don't think enough of us do that, right? We stick around with what's comfortable and pay the bills, but I just love this. I love what you do.
Is it therapeutic?
I think it's good. You can still, it is realistic to have that day job to pay the bills, but I think sometimes people get stuck in that reasoning and don't think I can maybe try to make this work outside of work so that I can still pay the bills, but work towards something else. And hopefully I can give up that job eventually.
Right. Yeah. Were you able to move past the 9-to-5 job and just focus on this passion?
Yeah. So it's good to be able to focus on this. And it's hard for writers to actually make a full-time wage out of it. So a lot of writers do still pick up writing work, and I do writing work at the moment. So grant writing and copywriting.
Oh, okay, good. Nice. But you're self-employed, like you're doing what you want for yourself. Got it.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Does it feel like work? Like even though you are writing a book, does it at times still feel like work? Like something you have to do?
Yeah, it does a lot sometimes, like especially when I'm trying to get to the end of the novel. And sometimes I might be exhausted for the day And if I'm pushing myself to write a novel, it can feel like a chore at times.
Yeah. And do you have an editor that you're working with?
Yeah, so I'm with a publisher at the moment. So they specialize in romance books. And so they usually edit my books when I submit new manuscripts.
The reason I asked, we had an author before, and I remember thinking like, gosh, like it was a different type of book. She was being a lot more vulnerable with her personal story. But I remember thinking like, gosh, if I'm producing something for the world to see, and I guess in a way, the podcast is that, but you're producing something for the world to take in, consume, and like give feedback on, especially if you have somebody who's editing it after. How hard is that for you? Is it like, no, like, I don't know. Is there any kind of like push and pull between what they want versus what you want? Do you find it difficult to let go of that?
No, I don't think so, because my publisher is very collaborative. So, and I actually been in editing and publishing for a while. So when they do make suggestions, I often agree with a lot of their suggestions. Like it does make the writing a lot stronger. And sometimes they give suggestions in the sex scenes as well. And so when I see a comparison, when they give an edit, I'm thinking, oh, that does make it a lot spicier or more visual for the reader. So I do agree with it. But if there's times when I'm thinking I'm not too sure about this edit and I bring it forward to them, like it is open to discussion, which is really cool.
That's really. Do you have audiobooks?
No, not audio at the moment. So
I was looking at. I'm looking at G-Rex because I have a funny story for the listeners. So I started reading the spicy novel. This was the first series, and my mother-in-law came to visit. And sometimes I need background noise when I'm working, and I work from home. There's nobody else in this office. So I put the spicy book on, and it has a storyline. It's not just X-rated from start to finish, right? Like there's a storyline there. There's dialogue that's not. Anyways, put it on Audible because I'm working, but I'm invested in the story. So I want to keep it going, right? And didn't realize that it had picked up on the pods in the guest suite as well as the office. So she got to hear some of the spicy novel. You know, it's fine.
Oh,
natural.
Did she enjoy it?
Yeah, she was like, what are you reading? And I'm like, I don't know what it's called, right? Like you're like embarrassed a little bit because you're like, oh, how much of that did you hear exactly? Because it gets pretty graphic sometimes. But
yeah,
I recommended it.
And some people don't really know what to do about that when they hear it.
I know.
And the only reason I laugh is because there's days that I will call Dirty Skittles and she's like, I'm trying to get my book off so I can answer the call.
Well, look, I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
For the reader, at least, I mean, yeah, you're kind of escaping whatever's happening in your life. You're imagining, the characters or yourself in the story or whatever. So, I mean, it's a little therapeutic as the consumer to take that in and, admire somebody's artwork.
It is therapeutic because I think so often people try to settle in romance books. They always have mind-blowing sex, but like that's not the case for everyone in real life. And so like sometimes I use metaphors for the orgasm scene, like it's like equivalent to like a tsunami hitting or an earthquake. And some people like reviewers or any book critics or interviewers, they're asking me, do you think this is realistic to compare this to a natural disaster? And then I'm like, yeah, like if you're not having sex that good, like you're not doing it properly. So like that's something to aim for.
Also, like who wants to read a book that's realistic about it? Like, no, I want those type of metaphors. I'm like, whoa, that must have been fucking great. Yeah. I don't want to be like, oh yeah, that's like an average Tuesday. Like no, that's not a good book to read.
Yeah, it's what everyone deserves. So I think it's something everyone should aspire to.
Yeah, no, I get it. That's funny. I never thought that there were like people reading and giving, hey, maybe you should write the sex scene this way. I never knew that was like a job. That's really good. New career goals unlock. Yeah, I guess I have a question for you. What books do you read when you're not writing your own?
So I read all different genres. So I love young adult fantasy. I also read thrillers and women's fiction, also literary fiction, and also different types of romance as well. So not necessarily only erotic. I read rom-coms and I've read young adult romance, and I also read autobiographies as well. So I can be a mood reader. I just read whatever like sparks my interest.
Do you have a favorite spicy romance? Or how about one you would recommend for somebody like just kind of diving into that world?
I think 50 Shades of Grey, I think that is something that a lot of women started with. And like, I know there's a lot of judgment with 50 Shades of Grey for various issues, and both for like the themes of like the BDSM and maybe consent, and also the way it was written. Like, a lot of people do say it wasn't written well, but I think the thing that 50 Shades did was it got a lot of people open to the genre, which was before that, I don't think people were as openly reading this genre. So I think there's probably a reason why so many people did connect with 50 Shades. So I see no shame in reading that. But there are the books of the same genre that is well written. So I was really lucky to get like book cover endorsements from Meredith Wild, Jay Kenner, and Cherry Adair, who all are international New York Times bestselling authors. And I'll recommend all their books as well.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, and 50 Shades, there's no shame. No shame. I think I read that. Was it Wattpad? Was that the app? Does anybody remember Wattpad?
Yes.
It was like where people would like write. I think that's where I read 50 Shades of Grey.
I read it, and I'm a lesbian, and I still read the book. I mean, like,
yeah. And now you can watch the movies.
Now I can watch the movies. But
would you ever let them make a movie of one of your books?
I would love that. I think that's all writers' dreams, but it's something that it's a long-term goal. It's something that I'm working towards.
Would be cool.
The only bad part about that is your mom might want to go see the movie.
Oh my gosh, what would you do?
Well, I can't not invite this. I'll just say, they just took their own creative liberty, and I didn't write that.
It's the washing machine scene. You're like, I don't know where that came from.
I love this. I love that you're doing this and that you found you're happy, because, so many people like dream or think about doing this and never kind of follow through with that, what they want to do. And you went out and did it. And kudos to you.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I think, because I heard a quote one time that if you don't like what you're doing or where you are at the moment, just do something about it. You're not a tree. So, and that sort of stuck with me. Like, every time I think I'm not happy about something, I just think I'm not a tree. So there's always something you can do about it.
I love that. And follow your path, and like, you're bringing joy to people, right? Like, and I don't think we should be ashamed of our sexuality at all.
No.
I mean, I'm not. Like, hey, anybody that looks at me is going to say I'm a big fat lesbian anyway, so it doesn't matter. Okay, like, I don't care anymore.
No, but I don't think there's anything wrong with sex, and I don't think there's anything wrong with like wanting to read about it, and like, I don't know. I wish. Well, maybe I don't. I was going to say I wish I would have thought this earlier, but I probably would have gotten in trouble. But I just think that like, there's nothing wrong with it, and it's taken me at least a long time to be okay with that thought, that there's nothing wrong with liking this or wanting to read about it, or fuck it, wanting to recreate a scene, right? Like, it is what it is.
I think so. Because I think even people that read romance, I think there's always that judgment there as well. Like, you're just reading mummy porn, or you're reading a dumb genre, because there's that stereotype that it's like a less intelligent genre as well.
Yeah, but you know who's smart? It's the dudes that are reading the books because their girls are into it. And then they're like, oh, I see. Okay, now I can try these things. And like, if I have consent, we can try it out. So kudos.
And there's a reason why it's the high selling genre as well. So many people read it.
I know, right? Okay, so I have two questions. Question number one. If you could, actually, let's go scrap that. What is the hardest lesson you've had to learn so far in your life?
The hardest lesson, terrible with boundaries. That's something I really need to work on, setting boundaries. And I found sometimes that made me get attracted to toxic people that had a really hard impact on my mental health, as in sometimes they would make me question my sense of reality. And I think part of that came from anxiety as well, like not being able to set those firm boundaries. Because when I was speaking to like even people like my brothers who don't have anxiety and they're quite mentally resilient, sometimes when I'm telling them of something that's happened, like this person has constantly lied to me and gaslit me and has done other questionable or weird things, they just say, oh, just don't engage with them then. And it sounds so simple. And and they so easily do it. They just like don't engage with people like that. But with me, that emotional impacts, like it still keeps like me tied in. And so I have trouble separating that. And I think with setting boundaries, I am a big people pleaser. And that is something that I'm trying to work on. So I don't like to disappoint people. And that is something that I do need to work on. And I think that is a big lesson to keep those boundaries. And I'm not obligated to associate with anyone that's making my life worse.
Do the characters in your book have boundaries? Are they?
Yeah, they do. So I did want to write characters that were stronger people. So people, actually, for my first book, she didn't have that much boundaries, but she grew at the end. But I think that is important to either see a character that maybe like lacks that development at the beginning, but she grows at the end, or seeing female characters that already has boundaries so that it does seem normal to have that. Because I think especially as women, people can be a bit taken aback if you're more assertive about your views.
Yeah. Okay, next question. If you could go back and give yourself a bit of advice, what age are you visiting your past self and what would you say?
So I would be visiting my past self as a kid and just, I guess, told myself to calm down, I think, because I was a very anxious kid. So I would even be like anxious over like, does this person hate me?
Mm-hmm.
Or I just got into trouble with the teacher, and I would just tell myself to calm down.
I love that, Liv. And I can tell you, like, the sooner you learn how to set boundaries, the freer your life will be. Like, after I had my mental breakdown, that was one of the first things I worked on. And yeah, I lost a few friends, but man, I've never felt so good.
Yeah.
It's absolutely freeing. So
yeah, it's hard work.
Yeah, like I think I do need to work on the art of saying no. So
Yeah.
And I think since I don't do it that often, it does feel uncomfortable to me sometimes, but it is something I'm getting better at.
Yeah, it's like a muscle. You have to keep working on it.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually have a couple of questions for you. What is your favorite word?
My favorite word.
Ooh, as an author, no pressure.
My favorite word. I tend to say yay a lot. I don't know why. I think I just like to show enthusiasm and support. And I think like there's nothing wrong with spreading positivity.
I love that. And what's your least favorite word?
Can't. So people always say I can't do something. And I think a lot of times people are just making excuses because there's always every second person always tells me that they're going to write a book. But out of all those people, rarely anyone even starts it, let alone finishes it. So I think they're just making all these excuses up in their head for why they can't do something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the fear. I'm guilty of it. I'm like,
even I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, because it's like, I have a fear of failing. So if I am going to take a risk at something, I am petrified to do it because I'm like, what if it's already risky, right? And then what if I fail at it? But we've talked to so many guests who have helped me get past that, because who cares? The world's not going to end if I fail at this one thing that I'm really passionate about. And so
I know. And there is that quote that if you're not failing at something, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah, maybe eventually I'll say that every day. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah,
So you just like turn that into a positive. I think I was reading Stephen King. He said that he got a lot of rejection letters when he first started writing, but then he would hang up these rejection letters on the wall like a badge of honor, because he thought of it to himself that it means he was moving forward every time he got a rejection.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, that might work. That might do it for me.
I'll just write you a bunch of rejection letters and you can stick them on your wall. But I'm going to do it in crayons.
Oh, so it looks murderous. Thank you. Can you cut them out of newspapers?
Yeah. Let me get right on that, because I don't think. Do they even make newspapers anymore?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll go find one. And I'll send you a newspaper letter. So, Liv, where can our listeners find your books?
So, I love to hear from listeners and readers. So people can find me on livarnold.com, and I'm also on Instagram, LIV_AU, and also on Facebook, Liv Arnold Author, where I post updates about my books. But they can find my books on all major online retailers like Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Kobo, all that good stuff.
Beautiful.
Love that.
I love this. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing what you do and letting me ask all the crazy fucking questions. Like, oh my God, we have a spicy novelist. This was a surprise to me, D-Rex.
I do have some tricks left up my sleeve. Okay? Just a few.
But no, thank you, Liv. I love this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you
so much.
Hi, all. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I'm G-Rex.
And I'm Dirty Skittles.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. We'd love to listen to your feedback.
We can't do this without you guys.
It's okay to be not okay. Just make sure you're talking to someone.